Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you. The Morning Majority, 630.
WMAL.
7:07, you're with the Morning Majority. I wonder, are you guys pumped for the trip to Capitol Hill tomorrow?
Not as excited as you are. Why are you so excited?
Well, it's like going home for me. I've spent a lot of years walking those halls. But we're going to go up there, and tomorrow we're going to ask the tough questions. We're going to talk to the elected officials. We're going to try to see if we can get our heads and our intellect wrapped around what's going on with this.
Is there going to be shrimp there? Because I know you're really into shrimp.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, my idea of a homecoming involves a couple of kegs and a football game. Usually starting at about 3:30 in the afternoon.
Believe it or not, on Capitol Hill, that can be arranged.
Yes.
Well, listen, we have KT McFarland on the line, Fox News national security expert. KT, let's get right into it. A lot of talk about what has happened over in Oslo, the tragic events there. Some 76 people are dead. They've sort of downgraded the death toll a little bit, although there are still some people missing, and it may go up. We're learning a lot about this guy, Anders Behring Breivik, and his views were apparently posted online. The thing that sort of bothers me about this is the police said we've never heard of this guy, never had any interaction with him, didn't see it coming. Although here's a guy who buys 6 tons of fertilizer who's posting rather sort of concerning things on the internet. How come they couldn't put it together over there?
Well, I think it's intelligence, and to me, intelligence is the one new weapon that we've got that we can use, and for the most part aren't using. I think what'll happen is that everybody will get, oh my gosh, this isn't Islamic terrorists anymore. It's right-wing neo-Nazi crazy guys. So that's what they'll run and focus on. But I'd like to just say, let's take a step back and look at what's happened in the world in the last decade. We never had stuff like, maybe we had the odd airplane hijacking, but we've never had this new phenomenon of terrorism, and it is not going away. And so then I went to do a rethink, okay, why do we have this new thing? And I think there are 3 things going on. One, there's a death cult. That Islamic terrorists, Al-Qaeda started it, but it honors death. You should seek to die. Every time in the history of the world we've had combat, we've always had, people will die if they have to for the cause, but there was always an escape plan. Look at September 11th. Those guys learned how to fly planes, but not how to land them. They had no intention of escaping. So there's this sort of this glorification of death. The second thing that's going on is that civilians are now absolutely fair game. You're so ideologically wound up that you think that anybody is the enemy, any civilian, military, so you don't care if it's a military or civilian target. And the third thing is we're fighting this asymmetrically. The bad guys, whether they're far right-wing extremists or Islamic-funded terrorists, they're fighting with no rules, and we're still having a lot of rules. So what's going to happen next? I think you're going to see more of a guy like you did in Norway, more lone wolf terrorists, whether they're from the far right or the far left. And what's the one weapon we've got? Intelligence. And as what we saw in Norway, nobody connected the dots. What did we see in September 11th? Nobody connected the dots. Well, what did we see with Major Nadal? Nobody connected the dots.
Well, and this guy warns that there's other cells out there. Is there any evidence there's sort of a network of the right-wing extremists in the way that sort of enables these folks in the way that there is with Al-Qaeda?
There does not seem to be, in the sense of well-organized central funding that then gets distributed. There certainly is nothing that we've seen like early Al-Qaeda, where you would be a terrorist recruited wherever you were recruited from, and then you went to Afghanistan initially, or to Pakistan, or to Somalia to train at training camps. But it's not to say that that's not the next wave. Right?
But I look at this and I say, all right, it just shows to me that you can't stop people when they're hell-bent on doing this, no matter what you do, no matter how much intelligence you really have. If you have one individual who is crazy like this, he's going to be able to pull these things off if he wants to, if he really, really wants to.
Well, sure. And it's like people who want to assassinate the President of the United States. The one guy you don't ever see coming is the lone wolf. But I think there's a lot more that we could do that we're not doing. We're not tracking people. We're not cooperating internationally. We're looking sort of in one place. We're always looking for the last kind of attack. We're never looking for the next kind of attack. Here we are in Afghanistan justifying our presence there as, well, we don't want Al-Qaeda to set up a training camp. wait, guys, Al-Qaeda's moved on. They're in cyberspace. The majority of their recruiting is now done on the Internet. And you're seeing more and more guys who don't go to Afghanistan to do training camps. They look online at Inspire magazine, which is Al-Qaeda's magazine. They learn how to make bombs there, and then they go out and do them. And they're encouraged to go out and kill yourself as long as you take a few people with you. Now, the far left, far right doesn't matter. They're all doing it.
Well, what concerns me, though, is because this guy was white and blonde hair, blue-eyed, and, didn't like Muslims, and that, for whatever reason, that was his motive, which, doesn't make a lot of sense that he's going to, go to an island and kill a bunch of kids. But that, for some reason, we're not going to be as vigilant, to use, lack of a better phrase, when it comes to fighting the war against Muslim extremists. Do you see this as a step back in that effort?
I'm sure some people will use it as an excuse to say, therefore, we don't want to deny civil liberties. We don't want to sort of prosecute or persecute Muslim Americans, or we don't want to go after them because, look, the threat is on the far right as much as it's on the far right. I think it's in both places. So don't stop looking at one and now look at the next. Look both.
I noticed that Dianne Feinstein of California has made a statement that she thinks it would be completely okay if Gaddafi stays in Libya, but if he's not going to be killed, he can stay in Libya, but he can't stay in power. Is that the way out of our excursion into Libya?
Oops.
So confused.
Oops. They made a big mistake, and there's now no way that Gaddafi leaves. I don't think there was ever a way he was going to leave anyway, but even for those people who held out the hope that he was going to leave, like the guys in the White House, he's not leaving now because the International Criminal Court has just indicted him. He knows if he leaves Libya, no matter where he goes, no matter who promises him safe passage, he's going straight to the International Criminal Court. He'll be convicted and he'll be executed. So he sticks around. And anybody who thinks as long as Gaddafi, as long as he signs a little piece of paper saying, guess what, we're not going to do anything bad, just let me stay in one of my many palaces, who's going to enforce that? Well, we are. We're back full circle. This is a mess. This thing was a disaster. We should never do this again. But at this point, I think, get him. What's wrong with getting him?
Well, what was the issue? Why
can't we get him? That's the question.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was the French who first recognized the rebels as the correct governing body, or what have you, recognized them, and then they just last week came out and said, oh, okay, well, maybe Gaddafi can stay as well.
Yeah, look, they've shot all the arrows in the quiver. They don't know what else to do. The Allies, the French, the British, they don't have any weapons left to fight this war. It's a complete and total stalemate. The rebels have turned out not to be up to snuff. They can't fight very well. They're not organized. We don't even know who they are. We don't have any other weapons left to throw at them. The United States is now having war powers issues. And as we've seen in the charade, the game that's being played in Washington now, there's not a whole lot of interest in this stuff. But yet, we see Syria, which is a much bigger threat to the United States and much bigger threat to humanity. This guy's getting off scot-free.
All right, KT, it's good to have you always here to talk about issues, and you can hear more from KT on your DEF CON web show, which is done each Wednesday. How do people get to know?
Okay, if you're really bored at Wednesday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern Time, go to your computer, go to live.foxnews.com, and watch us do an hour of in-depth conversation with the world's leaders on national security.
Well, I would never be bored if I were listening to that. I can assure you.
It's better than talking about the debt ceiling.
I'm you're bored with everything else in your life.
We're bored with the debt ceiling, but unfortunately, it's kind of important. We got to stay on it.